is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That is Black Country Communion with my favorite song off of their 3 discs. The song is called The Battle for Hadrian's Wall. And the only guy I know that found Hadrian's Wall, it is the one and only Glenn Hughes. Glenn, how are you, man?
Oh, that's pretty interesting, because Hadrian's Wall, back in the old United Kingdom where I was born. So, yeah, the Romans built a hell of a wall, didn't they? I'm doing really, really well here in California, and healing from my surgeries from my knees, just about ready to enter that Hall of Fame. It's an interesting period for me right now, so I'm really, really happy.
Sure. Well, let's talk about your health first, Glenn. Obviously, you did have some surgery. It's not huge news necessarily, but certainly for a performer like yourself, knee surgery is a big deal.
You know, it was so severe. I mean, I'll briefly tell you why my knees went to hell. Back in the 80s, and let's just say I'm not the man I am then now. I mean, when I got clean and sober in 91, I transferred all my addictive naughtiness into addictive, bike riding and running and walking and bloody skiing and in the 80s I had orthoscopic surgery when I was with Tony in Sabbath on the left one, and in 2002 I had orthoscopic on the right one, and since then, orthoscopic surgery really works well, but eventually, if you're not careful, if you really don't know how to maneuver in cardio, you're going to be in trouble. But my endorphins and the dopamine levels in my body were insisting that I do cardio. And I should have been on a bicycle in the gym, but I was running on a bloody pavement. I live on the beach, but I was running on a bloody path. And you run on a path for 22 years pretty much every day when you're home 5 miles a day. Wow. You're going to be in trouble.
Right.
And I knew 2 years ago that I was kind of on bone. I went on the road last August, and I was told late July that I had to have surgeries, but I couldn't do them until I got off the road. I finished in Singapore December the 9th, and in December the 11th, I had my first knee surgery on the left knee. On January the 14th, I had the right knee. Sorry, make a mistake. It was December 14th on the left, and 1 month later to the day, it was Jan 11th.
Okay.
And it was a very quick turnaround. I did it simply because I wanted to, A, recover, B, recover to perform on stage, and C, to have a back to regular lifestyle. I didn't want to do the operation 6 months in between, carrying a dead leg and a recovering leg. I did a really, look, man, the operations were pretty hardcore.
Right.
So, bit of a short story for you. I was playing in a place in Buenos Aires, and I met this fellow, Paul Diano, used to be in Maiden, and he was in a wheelchair.
Right.
This young man was in a wheelchair. And I said, what's going on, man? And he said, well, I got to have a knee surgery. I got to have like a replacement. I said, well, I'm going in 3 months, and he still hasn't gone. And I feel sorry for him because I see him on stage in a wheelchair, and the audience loves him. He's singing the old Maiden songs, but I couldn't go that. I can't imagine what it would have been like to not have done the surgeries because, after my heart surgery 2.5 years ago, having knee surgeries didn't seem like a big deal. Right. So I am now in 15 weeks and 11 weeks of recovery, and I think by the time I get up on the stage in the Hall of Fame, I think I'll be fine.
Excellent. Well, Glenn, let's talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame. Certainly that is probably the biggest news in your aura of big things that you always have going on. Like anything else, it just can't go as planned. Obviously there's a lot of tension between the various Deep Purple camps, and you find yourself somewhat in the middle. Talk a little bit about where you fit and what you're seeing.
Tension might be true, but not from not from any band members. I think it might be relative to whether certain members wanted Richie to play or not. The tension between any band members and David and I has been none. I just think there's been a rub because when Richie left the band, I don't think there was ever a healing process.
Sure.
I personally would have loved it if Richie would have been there to accept his award. And the thing is, I have to be very, very honest with you. We don't know I presume that the current lineup of Deep Purple will play at the Hall of Fame. And if David and I get an invitation to join them for a song, we will. But if we don't, it's not going to change the way it is. David and I are going to go out there, accept our awards, and be grateful for what we've done in the band. And I'm dedicating my award to all the fans, and of course, to Tommy Boland. Do I know if we're going to play? I haven't got a clue.
Right.
The thing is, Chris, it is what it is, and whoever plays that night for Deep Purple, and by the way, if this is the way Deep Purple operate, you never know to the last minute.
Right.
So, and whoever plays, and it's obviously Ian and Roger and Ian will play, and Don and I would imagine Don and Steve are going to play. Geez, it's no other way. I'll be standing up and applauding them,
Sure.
The fact of the matter is I'm not going to lose any sleep if David and I don't get up there. It's just the way things are, It's an invitation. And if it's just the way things are. The Hall of Fame is a different thing than any other thing, Mm-hmm. It's just a different approach. So
Sure.
I'm sure the Hall of Fame producers would like us all to be present and sing and play. But again, this is something that I can't control, or I don't think anybody can control it except the board members. And we just want to thank them for long overdue waiting time to finally get this award. And I kind of feel sorry for those of us that aren't getting awards. But again, I do not, we do not, our band do not call the shots on who
Sure.
gets awards and who doesn't. And remember now, Chris, every year there's a guy in a band that's not getting an award, or someone's going to get upset. And, when they called out the nominees, David and I were on the nominees, and we were very, very happy. And we're going to have a good time with our wives, and my people are going to be there. It's going to be great.
Sure. I think just from the fan perspective, though, and when I say the fans, I want to be clear on this, Glenn. I don't only mean guys like me that have enjoyed your music and Deep Purple's music for 40 years. I mean guys like the Metallica guys that have been so outspoken about the influence in that. I think it's almost a letdown that band politics sort of are getting in the way of Richie playing a song, Steve Morse playing a song, you guys playing a song, and just making those 15 minutes encompass everything that Deep Purple was. That was the influence not only to us as fans, but to so many of the bands that we've spent our lives listening to.
I agree. Now remember this now, and this is very important for you to broadcast. For the fans, strictly for the fans, mm-hmm. not just the guys in Metallica and all the heavy metal guys we have, like, all the rock musician friends of ours around the world.
Sure.
For the fans, a dream for the fans I know a lot of people would love to see all of us on stage doing a piece, a line, a verse, a chorus, mm-hmm. Everybody having a go. If that doesn't happen, it's none of my concern, because I'm not going to quarrel, I'm not going to be upset, because this whole thing is run by the Board of Fame, and what they would like is what the fans would like. But what will happen is what will happen. We will
Right.
not know what is going on until I get to New York, probably in, next a week from tomorrow. So
Okay.
I'm not losing any sleep over it. Again, we're going to accept our awards.
Sure.
I don't think there's no tension between any members of the band.
Sure.
Of any, no tensions between, Mark II, Mark III, and Mark I. There's a lot of gossip going around,
Right.
but, man, when you get to become the ages of who we are, there's so much more going on in life than worrying about who's going to play, who's not going to play. We're getting awards, and everybody knows we can all play and sing, and it's great.
Sure.
But you know something? It's going to be what it is on the night, and whoever plays and sings, we'll all be applauding them, whoever they are. So
Right.
may it all be wonderful.
Certainly.
Again, for the fans, my award really, really belongs to the fans. It's they got me this award. And, of course, if I could split my award down the middle and cut it in half, I'd be giving it to the Tommy Boland Foundation because, he should be getting an award. So,
Sure.
And, of course, I will be talking about John and his passing. So
Absolutely, man. Well, Glenn, let's move forward away from Deep Purple. It's been a strange time and I'm going to encompass like the last 5 years-ish of your career. I personally could not have been a bigger fan of the Black Country Communion. I still play these records at least once a week. I just great stuff.
When I look back at my life and I look back at my career, I look back at 3 specific bands
Okay.
that I was in. Trapeze being the band that we were a 17-year-old.
Sure.
I was 17, playing to 5 people a night, and then all of a sudden we're playing large clubs in America, then we're playing theaters, and then we're playing in some parts of America, we're playing 12,000 seats a night. And that for me was the formative years of who I was as a musician, as a writer. And that's when Deep Purple, the second band, saw that.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's just say after Purple, there was a period of time where I was not the man I am today. Let's just say that I wasn't living the appropriate lifestyle.
Okay.
Let's just say I got carried away with other things. Mm-hmm. And, I started my recovery in '92 and solo work, a lot of albums. And forming Black Country with Joe, Jason, and Derek brought me back full circle to the rock thing, kind of in that. If you listen very closely, and I know you do, listen to how closely you might listen to Black Country. You listen to Black Country, and then you listen to Deep Purple, if you will. It's the same sort of setup with keyboards and guitar. It's very similar in quality, songwriting, and in depth, the way things were sang and written, and Joe's voice and my voice, and his incredible virtuosity, and Derek's virtuosity, and you got a Bonham on the drums, and I was available to sing in the rock style that many fans wanted to hear. Sure. Kevin Shirley's a really good rock producer, so it's Black Country Communion will be the last band I ever play in, really, that it's not my own solo band, because it was such a great band that I wouldn't want to. I'd like to just leave it as it is. The legacy was so strong that it will be the last band I play in, because it was so unique, and I do listen to the albums sometimes. I'll be in the car and I'll put something on, or something will come on the radio, and I'll go, my God, oh my God, this sounds great.
Sure.
I listened to the music, and I listened to it like I wasn't on the song. I listened to it, and I'm going, oh Jesus, this is really good,
Right.
you know. And I think rock fans in general, if they don't know what it is, and they listen to it, they'll go, well, what the hell is this?
Right.
You know, that's what I was hearing when we came out. What is this? What is this? Mm-hmm. And when you think about those four guys in the band and you put it all together, it's when Joe and I started working together, it was just Joe and I for 6 or 9 months just playing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's Kevin Shirley's idea to bring Jason and Derek in, and the rest is rock and roll history.
Sure. And it just worked. And I think what does work, or what did work with Black Country, was you guys, it's not like you guys came together and force-fed what your past was to it. It's very unique to itself.
No, what it was, and let's be clear, Joe Bonamassa, and you got to tip your hat to this. Mm-hmm. Joe's been working solidly since he was a very young, I'd say since his early teens. And, you know, he's worked so much, you know, and he has worked his ass off. And there was no way that he was ever going to give his solo career up. But the albums are so good, mm-hmm. you know. We all love the albums, but underneath the surface, I knew that I never, we didn't ever see Black Country being a full-time project.
Sure.
The only problem is that, you know, we didn't work enough because Joe books himself out a year in advance, and you know, that's the way the land was. That's the way the land lied, you know. So as I look back, and we look back, and I look back, and I remember all the great moments we had together. The recording sessions were great. The DVD was fantastic. 3 albums and 1 DVD in like 2.5 years was a lot of work.
Sure.
And I look back with dignity and pride, and I say to everybody, if you want to really hear a great rock band that was on their calling, I'd say go listen to those records. We're all very fiercely proud, and we're all good friends and brothers, and long may that continue.
Sure. Now is Black Country the style that you'll move forward with, or are you going to bring back a little bit of that Crystal Karma type sound, or what do you look for in the future? The album I've never answered that before, but I'll say this to you because I was working in a trio last year. Mm-hmm. I wrote most of my album. I'm going to record a new album in June in Europe, in Copenhagen, the end of June. And I was writing for a trio style, you know, because I come from the trio with trapeze. Sure.
And about a month ago, I said, I'm gonna have keyboards on this album. So it would appear that is Glenn going to sound like Black Country? The answer to that is not really. It's going to be rock.
Okay.
But I don't want to try to sound like Black Country, but it will be a rock record.
Okay.
You know, it won't be me playing like street kind of funky Black American music, which I also love. But I've learned to know over the years that people, the general public, who actually I really respect, really would love for me to wear the rock roots from Deep Purple, which I'm famous for, and which Black Country brought back again. So the album I will make will be, you know, until I get into the studio and produce it, we won't know exactly the sound I'm going to get until I get in there.
Okay. Because
now I've just added a keyboard player.
Okay.
So now it's going to be more of a tip of the hat.
Sure.
You can actually get the arrangements could be more dramatic and more orchestrated when you have a keyboard player. So, but the album will be recorded in June, and hopefully we'll have it out before I start my European tour in November. That's what we're hoping, and that's what we're praying for.
Sure, definitely. Now, Glenn, I wanted to ask you one question about your late friend Kevin Dubrow. Just because I haven't talked to you in this long, since he passed away,
Yeah.
but obviously, truly a tragedy, and as a very close friend, as I believe you were, even more of a tragedy. I'm curious now what you think on a couple of things, specifically the carrying on of his music, as Quiet Riot without him. I'm certainly not asking you to point at. I'm certainly not asking you to point at it and say, "Well, that's bad" or anything like that. But do you think that it honors him?
I have to be careful here because Frankie's very, very, very close friend of mine. He's like family to me. Mm-hmm. Kevin Dubrow was blood to me. Kevin had a room in my home in L.A.
Right.
He would visit me at least once a month, and we would take the phones off, and we would go for walks, we'd go to the movies, we'd go into Hollywood and shop, and it was very, very straight. No drinking, no drugging. I think Kevin was attracted to my lifestyle without me talking about it.
Okay.
When he died, and we know how he died, and when I called 911 and had him break the door down, I knew he would. I just knew it. I just, kind of when somebody's gone. Mm-hmm. Frankie was so torn up with Kevin's passing. The movie, you've probably seen it. Mm-hmm. That's a very real movie. That's not scripted. That's not scripted stuff. That's a real movie. Frankie Vanelli is one of the kindest, with the fullest heart, family man, The man's wife died 2 years ago. Mm. So I understand when a man loses his singer and he is now got no, for better words, a way of making a living.
Sure.
Frankie could have been a sideman or formed a new band, but I think in his heart, he felt Kevin would have wanted Frankie to have moved on.
Okay. And
what we've seen in the film, and since the film, is that you've seen it in the film. You've seen the real deal. It's brutally honest.
Sure.
So my answer to you is that I love Frankie, and he's a very prideful man, and he's family oriented. He's got a beautiful little girl who's now a teenager. He needed to make a living.
Sure.
Again, he could have, gone back with Wasp, or he could have, maybe got Carlos to form a new band. But I think in his heart and in his soul, Kevin was calling him and going, "You got to go on. You got to carry on. You got to try and find somebody to sing. You got to do this for me." Mm-hmm. Kevin was never envious or jealous of any other person. Back in the 80s, when he was very popular, he did shoot himself in the foot with his, he was full of himself, and he learned the lessons because of that.
Right.
And the Kevin Dubrow I knew had no freaking ego. He was my wife loved him like family.
Okay.
I understand why Frankie continued, partly financial, but more importantly, he wanted to carry the spirit of Kevin Dubrow in Quiet Riot and trying to teach somebody how to do something that Kevin created.
Sure.
I get it and understand it. But I know people listening to this will probably, hopefully, understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
I love Frankie. And trust me, I may have said to him 6 months, 9 months after Kevin had passed, I may have said, and I did say to him, when are you going to start playing again, pal?
Right. Okay.
You know, Frankie didn't pick a drumstick up for quite some time.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, we spoke, but we had dinners and lunches, but he wasn't ready to pick the sticks up. And when he picked the sticks up, he felt in his heart, after all that time of grieving, he needed to continue in Quiet Riot.
Sure.
And
Definitely.
look what he went through.
Mm-hmm.
And had the balls to film that shit.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
And put it out there and let the world see it.
And you know something, man? Regardless if I'm in the movie, I don't care about that. I think what he captured, I mean, there's some fucking funny shit in there as well.
Right.
I mean, brutally, you know, kicking stuff around, and the funny shit is very kind of real Spinal Tap. You know, with Chuck Wright's bass never working and the amps never working. It's fucking hilarious.
Right.
But if you knew Frankie like I did, like I do,
Right.
like really know Frankie, there's a solid human being. One of the nicest, kindest, most sweetest men alive, regardless if he plays music or he doesn't.
Okay.
That's the kind of guy I want next to me.
Sure.
He's a great human being.
Excellent.
Great human being. Great. And I only want to wish him all the very best. And I only want to wish Quiet Riot and the spirit of Kevin Dubrow only the very best.
Sure. Now, Glenn, let me ask you one more quick question before I let you go. And this is something I can relate to because I, too, have written 2 autobiographies at this point about my far less famous life than yours. The hardest part for me for writing and putting it out was actually putting it out there, putting out the lumps and, you know, letting the world see it. And that's exactly what you did with your book, too. Talk a little bit about how difficult, because it's not difficult to write it, but it's certainly difficult to live it and have people questioning you on, well, you did this and you did that. And, you know, how was that experience for you? Was that difficult? Was it ever uncomfortable?
I've done many, many, many interviews 4 or 5 years ago on my book.
Sure.
And only a few people I said this to. It's not like I was trying to keep it from you. Mm-hmm. I wrote that book in 9 months with Joel McIver, my co-writer, spending time in my house and on tour with me in 2000, I don't know, 8, something like that.
Right.
And I wrote it, but I didn't talk about my relapses.
Okay.
You know, like, let me just say this to you. This is like, you know, when somebody gets clean and sober, and some people remain clean and sober forever without going back and testing the waters. Mm-hmm. I, on the other hand, I would call them some private, if you will, anonymous cavorting. I did 4 or 5 over the course of about 3 years. I sort of went off for a weekend and did some, you know, a little bit of drinking, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Right.
And, you know, I'd come home to LA and act like nothing had happened.
Okay.
Well, you know, I came clean in my book about that.
Sure.
That period for me was, I got sober Christmas Day, 91, and I started, you know, messing around. I said 3, 4, 5, no more than 5 times between the fall of 94 and the fall of 97. But when I first wrote the first draft of my book, I didn't tell you about it. But my sponsor, my AA sponsor, on his deathbed, made me promise to add those relapse stories into the book.
Wow.
So it took me another good 6 months to open up and tell you, the listener, the reader, about it, because I do not want to have any secrets. Like I wrote in Black Country song, Little Secret, I don't want to have a secret because secrets will kill me.
Right. No.
What I'm saying is that I had my last drink November 23rd, 1997, and
Okay.
last, sniff of coke and pills and what have you, and only because I don't have any secrets, because I didn't want to have a secret like I was going out and cavorting in the mid-90s and not telling anybody.
Sure.
So, and you know something, man? Best thing I ever did was come clean. So
Sure.
I'm celebrating 19 years this year of complete abstination from anything that affects me from the neck up.
Right.
You're talking to someone that just has no time at all for drug use or behavior, because I've been completely understand about what drugs do to people, and it doesn't work for me any longer.
Sure. Definitely. Well, what does work for you, Glenn, is definitely the music. It's still as good as ever. And, no question, you are a legend, and you are being treated as such here in the next week when you get officially inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So,
Incredible.
as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track to wrap the interview up. What should we wrap this up with? And maybe tell us a quick story about it.
I want you to finish with Faithless by Black Country Communion,
Okay.
because I was just listening to it in the car on the way home today. And I was listening to that, my lack of faith has no shame. It is reckless. And that, to me, tells a story of the secret that I was holding, And look, I'm not going to talk about religious stuff on this program, but I can say this to you: there's a guide. We have guides in our life. You can call the guide what you wish, but I had to have faith. But I also wanted you to know that at one time I was faithless. And when I hear the lyrics I wrote on that song, I was cast out to see my life, amen. It's like, it's a real story of one finding himself out in the middle of the ocean, cast adrift with no faith, and swimming to shore. And I think the lyrics of my songs are all biographical about my life and about the good, the bad, and the different. And when I think of a song to close, I think people have got to have faith. And if you don't have faith, you're in fear. And if you're in fear, you better start thinking about swimming.
Right. Well, let's check it out right now. This is the Black Country Communion. It is Faithless right here on your Classic Metal Show.